Hi guys, and welcome to True Crime UK. If this is your first visit to the channel, please give the video a big thumbs up and also subscribe to the channel. Don't forget the bell so you get notifications of when my videos come out. As always, please be aware that we will be discussing multiple murders of children, so viewer discretion is strongly advised. In today's video, we'll be talking about a series of murders that happened between July 1963 and October 1965 in Manchester, England. 5 children between the ages of 10 and 17 were murdered. 4 of them were sexually assaulted, murdered and buried on Saddleworth moors. The culprits were one Ian Brady and one Myra Hindley. These murders become known as the Moors murders. On the 12th of July 1963, Pauline Reed, a 16-year-old, was getting ready to go to a dance at a local social club in Gorton in Manchester. Pauline loved dancing and went very often with friends. This evening she had planned to meet friends at the British Railways social club. After getting herself ready, Pauline leaves the house to make the short journey to the club. Pauline never arrived at the club. Upon her disappearance, her family searched the streets for her. A glove was found that belonged to her, but nothing else. Despite local efforts and media and police input to find her, Pauline had vanished without a trace. On the 23rd of November 1963, just 5 miles away in Ashton-under-Lyme, 12-year-old John Kilbraid was visiting a local market. He had been to the cinema earlier with a few friends and went to the market to try and earn a few coins, helping traders pack and clean up at the end of the day. After helping a few traders, John finds himself separated from his friends and, just like Pauline, simply vanishes. 2 children are now missing from the Manchester area within months of each other. Despite police searches and appeals, no information comes in to help find John or Pauline. On the 16th of June 1964, Keith Bennett had just turned 12 years old. He lived in the Longsight area of Manchester. He was due to visit his grandmother that evening. Keith walked up Stockport Road with his mother. Keith and his mother split up, with Keith making his own way to his grandmother's. Again, Keith never makes it to his grandmother's and simply vanishes. On the 26th of December 1964, 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey, who lived in Ancoats, Manchester, asked her parents if it was okay if she could go to a local fairground with her 2 friends and their mother. Leslie's father said it was fine as long as she was back for dinner at 5 p.m. Leslie left for the fair. After Leslie didn't come back for dinner, her family got worried and searched the fairground for her. Leslie, like John, Pauline and Keith, had vanished into thin air. Leslie's family went to the police for help, just to get accused by the police of hurting Leslie themselves. Her parents were quizzed for 6 or 7 hours. Finally, officers were satisfied that Leslie's parents were not involved and launched an investigation into Leslie's disappearance. Over the next 10 months, all sightings and information regarding Leslie's disappearance led to nowhere. The cases of all 4 children had started to go cold. On the 6th of October 1965, 17-year-old Edward Evans is at Manchester Central train station. He was on his way to watch a football match. He is then approached by a young man and a conversation starts between the two. Edward is then invited to a house party on the promise of alcohol and girls. Being a normal 17-year-old, the offer was too good to turn down. So he and the man left the station and made off to a house in Walderbrook Avenue in Manchester. The following day, police receive a call from 17-year-old David Smith. David claims that he had witnessed a murder. Police sped to David's location, picked him up and took him back to the police station to listen to his version of events. David Smith said that on the 6th of October he was at a house with 2 friends, Ian Brady and Myra Hindley. There was also a third person, who was 17-year-old Edward Evans, who David said looked like he was a friend of Brady's. After a while, David said he noticed a change in Brady's behaviour. David was outside smoking when a fight breaks out inside the house between Edward and Brady. David rushed inside to see Brady attacking Edward with an axe. He then says he sees Brady hitting Edward again and again and again with the axe. Brady then fetched a piece of electrical cable and strangled the life out of Edward. David told police that he feared for his own safety and helps Brady to hide Edward's body in a room upstairs. The house was actually owned by Myra Hindley's grandmother, who at the time of the murder was in an upstairs room, totally oblivious to what had just happened in her own house. Davis also told police that Brady had said to him that there had been other murders, but said that Edward's murder had been the messiest yet. On the information from David, the police acted and attended Walderbrook Avenue. One police officer knocked the door disguised in his uniform. As soon as Hindley opened the door, both police entered and informed Hindley and Brady that the reason they was in attendance was due to an allegation of a serious crime that had been received. A police search of the house was undertaken. Hindley was reluctant to let police into one particular room, which was locked tight. Brady told Hindley to give the key to the police. The police entered the room and realised that every word that David Smith had told them was 100% true. Police found the bloodied body of Edward Evans tied and covered up. Ian Brady and Myra Hindley are arrested and questioned. Brady admitted that he had indeed had a fight with Edward, and as a result of the fight had killed him. Hindley said that she was in another room when the fight happened, effectively distancing herself from the attack. Upon searching the house in Wardbrook Avenue, police found an exercise book, which contained lots of drawings and names in it. Brady was questioned about the book. Brady said, "It's just a book that I used to scribble and doodle things in." The police then said to Brady that one of the names mentioned in the book was none other than John Kilbride. This can be no coincidence. John hasn't been seen since he disappeared trying to earn at the market. Police now had major concerns that John Kilbride had also been murdered. When the police were searching the house on Wardbrook Avenue, they found several photos of Hindley and Brady on Saddleworth Moor, which was quite local. David Smith had mentioned other victims. Police come to the conclusion that Saddleworth Moor may be a burial site, so they decided to search the location for the body of John Kilbride. After the initial murder of Edward Evans, police questioned the neighbours of Hindley's grandmother's house in Wardbrook Avenue. They spoke to a 12-year-old girl who said she had spent evenings with Brady and Hindley at the moors. She also told police the exact spot favoured by Hindley and Brady. Acting on the information, the police start another mass search on the moors for John Kilbride. Meanwhile, back at Waterbrook, officers stumble across more evidence, but this time much more disturbing. A prayer book was found. Inside the book was a left luggage ticket for Manchester Central Station, the same station that Brady had met Edward. Police searched the location at the train station and found coshes, wigs, masks and dozens of photos, pictures of Brady and Hindley on the moors. There was also images of a missing local girl, Leslie Ann Downey. The police also discovered 2 audio tapes. One was of Leslie Ann Downey pleading to be able to go back to her mother. You could also hear Brady's and Hindley's voice on the tape. As a result of these findings, a huge search of the moors involving multiple police forces, volunteers and the military was carried out. After a few hours of searching, a police officer named Bob Spires noticed a depression on the ground filled with water. This was searched and the body of 10-year-old Leslie Ann Downey was found. 5 days later, the search team discovered the body of John Kilbride, not far from where Leslie Ann's body was found. Brady and Hindley are further questioned, but both remain totally uncooperative. But the evidence is undeniable, and on the 14th of April 1966, both Myra Hindley and Ian Brady were found guilty of the murders of John Leslie and John, and given life in prison. The pair stood in the dock and upon hearing their sentence smiled at one another. The families of the victims shouted, "Hang the bastards." Unfortunately, the death penalty had recently been abolished. Brady was given 3 life sentences, and Myra 2. But there were still 2 children out there unaccounted for, Pauline Reed and Keith Bennett. Years later, Ian Brady was to be diagnosed as a psychopath after serving many years in a mainstream prison and is moved to a high security hospital. A journalist named Fred Harrison decided he would try and help the families of the missing children by visiting Brady at Ashworth Hospital and see if he could retrieve any information about the whereabouts of the missing children. He had no idea if he could get any information out of Brady or not. On the 21st of January 1985, Brady admitted that there were other victims that were on the moors, though he wouldn't reveal where. On this information, the police decided to review the original investigation leading to Myra Hindley being questioned again. Upon questioning, Hindley asked how she could help and said she could point out the areas of the moors that was of interest to Brady. The police decided to take Hindley back to the moor in an attempt to jog her memory. This was to be done without the public's knowledge. But a government minister decided to broadcast it to the world, leading to the world's media swamping Saddleworth Moor to get a glimpse of Myra Hindley and the search. Police deployed decoys in an attempt to manage the situation. Hindley was taken to the moors twice. The first trip drew a blank, but the second trip she revealed information about the murders of the children. Hindley and Brady had a system whereas Hindley would drive a minivan and Brady a motorbike. When Brady spotted a likely victim, he would flash his lights. Hindley would stop and entice the victim into her car. This was the case for Pauline Reed. Brady flashed his lights, Hindley pulled over next to Pauline. Hindley then realised she knew Pauline as they were neighbours. Hindley persuaded Pauline to get into the car to help find a glove that she had lost on the moor, on the promise of some music records for helping. When arriving at the moors, Brady joined them. Pauline was taken to the moors by Brady, where she was raped, then beaten and stabbed. He then cut her throat so hard she was nearly decapitated. Brady left her in a shallow grave on the moors. Keith Bennett was picked up in the street by Hindley, who had asked Keith if he would help load some boxes into her vehicle. He too is taken to a gully next to a stream. Keith was then raped and strangled by Brady and buried on the moors by the gully and water. John Kilbride stumbled upon Myra Hindley at the market. Hindley was wearing a wig to hide her identity. She persuaded John to get into her car, saying that it was late and his parents would worry where he was and that they would drop him home. He too was taken to the moor. She dropped Brady and John off. She returned 30 minutes later to find Brady alone, having raped and murdered John Kilbride before burying him on the moor. Leslie Ann Downey was at the fairground, stood near a line when Hindley and Brady approached Leslie and dropped their shopping. They then asked Leslie to help pick it up and then was persuaded to get into the vehicle. She was then taken to the house in Wardbrook Avenue, where she was undressed, gagged and forced to have photos taken before she too was raped and killed. She was then buried in a shallow grave on the moor. On the 1st of July 1987, police discovered the remains of Pauline Reed 24 years after she was killed and buried on the moors and less than 100 yards from Leslie Ann Downey. Both Hindley and Brady had returned to the moor and both pinpointed the same location, the last child that had still not been found. But even with this information, Keith Bennett to this day has not been found. On the 15th of November 2002, Myra Hindley dies of respiratory failure at the age of 60. She had always denied any involvement in the physical side of these terrible crimes, but said she was equally guilty by getting children into her car and giving them to Brady. On the 15th of May 2017, Ian Brady dies from natural causes. Unfortunately, Keith Bennett's remains up to now have never been found. His mother Winnie lives in hope that her son will be found all the way up to her death. There have been many searches for Keith in recent times, but still Keith has not been found. The chances of finding his remains now, after nearly 50 years, are very low, due to the water running through the gully where Keith was supposedly buried. An expert stated that the water would damage and eventually destroy Keith's remains. When Ian Brady died, it is believed that his final wish was to have his cremated remains scattered on the same moors that he killed and buried his victims. Something a judge later said will never happen.